I chose to focus on the war genre of films, and have analyzed the films Apocalypse Now, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and Inglorious Basterds, directed by Quentin Tarantino. The historical context of when these films take place is just as important as when they were made. Apocalypse Now was released in 1979, but pre-production began 4 years earlier in 1975, the same year the Vietnam War ended. In contrast, Inglorious Basterds was released almost 65 years after it takes place. The reason I chose these two films is because, although they are both war films, neither one fits into the typical war film mold. Apocalypse Now could be better characterized as a multi-genre psychological drama about the evils of humanity, while Inglorious Basterds could be seen as a self-aware action film about the power of film, chock full of cinematic intertextuality and subtle references to previous works.
Un festival Max Linder.
I began this project wanting to analyze how the genre of war movies has changed over time, but after watching these two incredible films, I have come to the conclusion that war is a constant. It is just as evil today as it was 1,000 years ago, and both Mr. Coppola and Mr. Tarantino recognize this. In both films, the directors purposefully and meaningfully choose when and how to show the evils of war. In Apocalypse Now, it is used to show how war changes people and dehumanizes them. The various scenes in Apocalypse Now can almost be viewed as self-contained events chronicling the evils of war, jumping from scene to scene the way a textbook jumps from chapter to chapter. In this way, the boat transports our characters from one scene to the next, each one stranger than the last, through the metaphorical arteries clogged with evils towards the heart of darkness, Kurtz. Kurtz represents pure ruthlessness, humanity untroubled by morality, and as the boat gets closer, the characters begin to discover their inner Kurtz.
Are my methods unsound?
For example, we see Lance at the beginning of the film as a carefree surfer kid enjoying life.
Lance, on the forward 50s, was a famous surfer from the beaches south of L.A.
Coppola shows his innocence by literally dousing him in light. As the movie progresses and he becomes more exposed to the evils of war, he needs an escape. He finds this first in various drugs, and finally by completely giving in to his inner Kurtz by joining the slaughtering of the water buffalo. Willard is also changed by the war as he discovers the truth of it. His only gunshot of the entire film is fired on an innocent Vietnamese woman. This is also a metaphor for how America was not willing to go all the way in Vietnam, and instead tried to do the impossible and fight a moral war.
We train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't allow them to write fuck on their airplanes because it's obscene.
In an interview about the film 40 years later, Coppola points out the irony in this goal and says that he wanted to make a film that showcased the contradiction of morality in war.
I think that's really the contradiction of morality which we have in war. I think that's what I was going about, a film about morality.
After this point, Willard is a changed man, and Coppola shows this to the audience by no longer using the special effects, dark humor add-ins, or rock music to mask the truth of war. From this point on, war is presented in its raw, unaltered form to the audience. In contrast, Inglorious Basterds is a war movie about the power of film on people. Although technically categorized as a war film, Tarantino is known for venturing outside the box with his movies. In regard to Inglorious Basterds, he famously said, "As much as I love genre, and I try to deliver the goods, I go off from it. I go do my own thing." Before the film even begins, we get a taste of what we are in for through the Universal logo. Tarantino made a creative decision to use the logo from the 1960s. This is neither when the film took place, nor when it was made. Instead, this is a subtle nod to Sergio Leone and the spaghetti western era off of which the first scene is based. As Max Bard points out, many shots of the first scene of Bastards mirror the first scene of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, directed by Sergio Leone. Tarantino has said in many interviews that Sergio Leone is the creator who most inspires him, and what better way to pay homage to him than to mirror a scene from his best-known film. In the first scene, Tarantino flexes his cinematic talent by creating a suspenseful, 15-minute sequence of mostly dialogue, using creative composition to foreshadow future events, lighting and negative space to establish dominance,
Before the occupation, there were 4 Jewish families in this area.
and the use of non-diegetic sound to add to the final climax.
Je vous dis adieu.
Camera movement is very limited in this scene, but when it is used, it is purposeful. This scene establishes the tone for the rest of the movie, using powerful film to deliver a message on war and revenge. The cinematic intertextuality does not stop in the first scene, however, using various references to Sherlock Holmes,
Family's name off my list. And if there are any irregularities to be found, rest assured they will be.
Bin ich
King
die Geschichte
Kong.
des Negers in Amerika?
Nein.
Also dann muss ich King Kong sein.
Ah,
Cinderella, Scarface, another Brad Pitt film, Fight Club,
You know, fighting in a basement offers a lot of difficulties. Number one being, you're fighting in a basement.
and even a cameo by Enzo de Castellari, the director of the original Inglorious Basterds. Tarantino is able to acknowledge the power of film on people and create a feeling of hyper-reality, or the inability to distinguish reality from fantasy. Tarantino has said that he does not consider Inglorious Basterds to be a fantasy.
In the course of my story, my characters change the course of the war.
This feeling of hyper-reality created through his powerful film allows him to more effectively get his message across. Because of the long time period separating the war and the release of the movie, tensions surrounding World War II have decreased enough for filmmakers like Tarantino to create characters of the Nazis, almost humanizing them through Hans Landa. This is something that could not have been done in Apocalypse Now. The tensions and social unrest regarding the Vietnam War in the mid to late 70s guided Coppola's hand to create strong, dominating American characters,
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
while presenting the enemy as faceless, brutish warriors. In present day, Nazis have almost become a metaphor for all that is evil. Whether calling someone who is uptight about punctuation a grammar Nazi, or labeling opposing politicians as Hitler. The idea of Nazism has become interchangeable with pure evil. For this reason, Tarantino has chosen World War II to be the medium through which he delivers his message on revenge. In the film's climax, we witness a theater full of Nazis, German leaders, and even Hitler literally explode from the power of film. As a viewer, one can't help but feel excited about this happening, even more so because we are lost in the sense of hyper-reality. However, the beauty is in the irony. The reason that this operation was even possible was because the Nazis were gathered to watch a film about the senseless killing of their enemies, the exact same type of film that Inglorious Basterds is.
Fabelhaft, mein Lieber, fabelhaft.
The powerful message of this film is a rhetorical question Tarantino forces us to ask ourselves. When we celebrate death, no matter how evil the person, are we any different than that which we wish to destroy? Here, in this ultimate message, is where Inglorious Basterds is most like Apocalypse Now. In his film, Coppola uses the character of Kurtz to show what we become when we will do anything to win a war. Pure ruthlessness, shunned from society. While Tarantino uses a different war to put forth the same message. When we stoop to the level of our enemy, we too lose our morality. Both films showcase the simple truth that there is no morality in war, and any attempt to maintain morality is futile and counterproductive.
The book says Captain.
These two films were created in different historical and cultural contexts, but if 30 years later, films are still trying to send the same message, then one can conclude that war is a constant. It is just as evil today as it was 1,000 years ago.